I want to point out some somewhat advanced things to consider when you're looking at your marketing and sales funnel. This here is a slightly more elaborated example of what most companies would use when they're looking at their CRM data. Now, the reason it's a little more advanced is because often companies don't factor in these first two stages, which are marketing captured leads and marketing engaged leads. Your MCLs are going to be things like leads that you acquired by purchasing a list of leads from a broker, or maybe you compiled a database by scanning through something like LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Marketing engaged leads are going to be the people that are reading your white papers and your ebooks, they're clicking your emails, these sorts of things. Marketing qualified leads, by my definition, would be somebody that actually requested a demo or consultation, something like that. SQL would be sales qualified lead, someone that has engaged in a meaningful conversation. They actually showed up to the meeting through Zoom or phone call, something like that. SQO, somebody that's likely to make a purchase in the next 6 months, perhaps. And then won customers. So there's nothing super surprising here. I mean, maybe you don't include these two and you just call those leads or contacts, and maybe your SQL and SQO are considered the same thing. But the main thing that I want to point out here is how this analysis is normally done. Normally what we do is we look at our CRM data as business to business marketers and we say, okay, well, how many of these MQLs were generated in January? And we might say, okay, well, there was 100. And then maybe there was 30 SQLs, and then perhaps there were 10 SQOs, and then maybe we won 3 customers, something like that. This would be a kind of a standard piece of collection of data that you're going to be looking at. Now, the problem here from a technical perspective is that the MQLs here are not necessarily resulting in the SQLs in the same month. So what may happen is you may be looking at March, so January, February, and then March. So these 100 MQLs might be generating SQLs in March. They could be generating SQLs in April. So just because you generated these marketing qualified leads this month doesn't mean that they're converting to the next stage in that same month. In fact, it's highly likely that they're going to convert to one customers months in advance of actually generating. So there's leading indicators that you need to consider, like MQL, and there's trailing indicators, which is things like one customer. So there's these delays. And I think because of these delays, that's one of the reasons that chief marketing officers typically have a pretty short tenure at a company, because it takes time to invest in marketing and you don't harvest the results until you plant the seeds. So planting the seeds would be things like getting the captured leads, and then harvesting is when you actually get the won customers and the renewed contracts, things like that. So to do a more advanced analysis, and you can rely on your business intelligence team, your analytics team, whoever does the data analysis at your company. You don't necessarily have to when you're doing the marketing or the CEO, but the way that you would do it is some sort of cohort analysis. So what you would do is you would say, okay, in January, let's look at all the contacts in our database that became MQLs in January, and of all time, how many won customers do we get from that cohort? So this is the cohort, MQL 100. And then we may say that total SQOs was 50. So the January cohort was 100 MQLs. That's how we're defining the cohort, is people that became an MQL in January. And of all time, so up until today, whatever today is, maybe it's March or April, we got 50 SQOs and maybe we got 20 closed won customers. So then we're actually going to get a proper conversion rate, like a true funnel, where we're not just looking at a snapshot of what's happening in January, but instead we're looking at a cohort of people that reached this lead status in January and what the conversion rate was. So that's a more precise way of analyzing your funnel. Now, there's different ways of doing this. You can generate custom reports. You can use plugins to Salesforce to create whatever dashboards you want. You can also tag things based on campaigns. So for example, let's say you did a huge campaign centered around a key theme. Well, that could be another cohort. So maybe it was tagged campaign 1. All right, well, let's look at that campaign that we invested so much money in. And maybe we realize, okay, we had MQLs of 1,000. We got SQOs of, I don't know, maybe 350. And then we got a 1 of 100, something like that. So we're able to look at the cohorts and see what the conversion rates, and we're able to do some sort of macro analysis in terms of not just individual months or individual emails, but kind of overall people that were enrolled in this campaign, what were the conversion rates? Now, that's one aspect of the funnel that you need to consider, this idea of cohort analysis. The other thing you need to consider is that when we look at our marketing funnel in this way, this sales-oriented way, this demand generation way, this short-term performance marketing mindset, really what we're looking at is the results, the outputs. But what's very helpful from a marketing perspective is thinking about the inputs. What are the causes? What are the seeds that we need to plant to be able to reap this funnel as a reward? And that's where I use a different type of funnel. Basically a funnel that's designed to orient you around certain types of content pieces that you need to create. So I typically think of the beginning of this funnel or the sequence, whatever analogy, term, visual form you want to describe it as. I don't really care. It's just kind of a shorthand way of explaining what's happening here. So you're going to have people that are brand unaware. They're not familiar with your brand, so that means you need to do brand awareness content. So things like video ads on LinkedIn. Okay, and the goal there is not to generate SQLs, it's just to generate awareness. And then there's problem unaware people. So people aren't necessarily aware that the problem is worth solving. So we're going to create content for them. Category unaware, they don't necessarily know that your product category is the solution to that problem. Product unaware, they aren't that familiar with your product. They don't think it's the best solution in the category. They want to go with a competitor. Free offer unaware, these are people that are not convinced or do not know that you offer a demo or you offer a $100 incentive to do the demo. And then the paid offer unaware. So the people that either aren't familiar with or aren't convinced that your solution, your paid solution is the best solution for them. So this is the kind of funnel that you need to think about when you're thinking about inputs, whereas this is a little more retroactive, a little more about diagnosing holes in the conversions. This is more about strategizing what kinds of content, what types of campaigns to create. So you should think of the funnel in both respects. This is typically how you think of it in a sales-oriented kind of short-term type of mindset, and this is more of a long-term planning mindset.